Game industry has been growing rapidly since the introduction of technologies such as personal computer, internet, game console and smartphones. In 2015, Fortune magazine reports that mobile games will generate $30.3 billion worldwide, while the console games will generate $26.4 billion. The video game research firm called Newzoo has provided the predictions above and has expected sales for the total worldwide gaming market to be $91.95 billion by the end of 2015. According to DigiCapital's new Global Games Industry Review, it reports that the games industry is expected to be worth more than $100 billion in the next 3 years, with mobile gaming a major driving force among all. Taking the above into considerations, here comes the question. How did the game industries generate these big revenues? How do such big studios as Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, King, and LucasArts make their million-dollar games annual revenues? There are a few methods how game developers and game publishers can sell their games to the players. Besides selling games on shelves in the physical game store, we can also purchase the game from Steam, Android Market, or App Store. Some newer consoles like Sony PlayStation 4 or Xbox One also allow their users to buy games from their own respective in-console online market. More recently, DLC, also known as downloadable content, and microtransactions have also been introduced to the gaming market. DLC is an additional content that was created for a released video game. They are usually distributed via the in-console game market to the player, and sometimes are sold together with the game as a package. They normally cost less or sometimes nearly the same as the cost of a new game, depending on the contents included in the DLC. Microtransactions are in-game purchases that are bought with a real-world currency, with paying methods such as credit cards, PayPal, or prepaid game credit. The content is commonly believed to be in-game items that you can use in the game, such as armories, in-game currencies, emoticon, and so on. Microtransactions was first widely used within a multiplayer online games for PC, initially like MapleStory, World of Warcraft, and more recently it has become popular among mobile games such as Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, Real Racing 2, and so on. These games are also known as freemium games, which is a type of F2P or also known as free-to-play games. As contrast to a free game, which has all contents available for players to be explored from the very beginning till the end of the game for free, freemium games will only allow players to play basic game contents without paying. In order to access exclusive contents and additional contents, player will have to pay for it. Many games developers and publishers, such as Blizzard, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and a few more to be named, has widely adopted this microtransaction model for their own mobile games. An industry veteran, David Edery, who is a former head of Microsoft's Xbox Live Arcade, mentioned at Game Connect Asia Pacific 2010 that success from the game like Farmville has far more to do with its accessibility than its social aspects. This is due to the playability of the game for a wide market, from young to older people, anytime, anywhere, as long as they have an access to the internet. A few examples of popular games like Tomb Raider, Team Fortress 2, and Destiny have recently introduced microtransactions in their games. According to the developer of MMORPG Lord of the Rings Online, Turbine, the company's revenues from the game has doubled since they dropped the subscription-based price model and moved to a free-to-play model. Therefore, it is proven that the thoughts of many who will concede that by doing free-to-play model in games turn out more expensive to the publisher has become untrue, because by giving out access to an MMO for free, it will attract a greater number of audience and thus making the game more popular and more microtransaction sales opportunity. Microtransactions, in turn, is not entirely successful either, especially when the model is applied to the games for kids. Many parents will agree that most of the kids has no knowledge about the value of money and how to spend that money wisely on game with microtransactions. It's been noticed that many game companies receive a lot of complaints from customers claiming that children spend money on games using microtransactions without any authorization by their parents. To support this, there's a good example, the tweets by Kanye West on 10th of October 2015. They show that unauthorized purchases made by kids turn out to be quite troublesome for the parents and cause the bans on using and playing with their phones and tablets. According to the Verge report, Apple even settled a class action lawsuit last year over the issue, paying out $35.2 million to 37,000 customers and offering refunds for unauthorized purchase made by kids. It's good to mention that although Kanye West and Kim Kardashian were both victims from such a tricky business model, ironically, Kim's own successful Hollywood app for the teenagers and young adults is making millions from the game's in-app purchases. To sum it up, most parent or game players are not interested in spending money on microtransactions in games. Although, how about game makers themselves? As an artist or programming engineer who makes games professionally, it is also important to consider their views on the matter as well. To accomplish that, here is an interview with a 3D freelancing artist from Malaysia.
How long? Almost 3 years. I first started out as an intern in a small studio in Kuala Lumpur, promptly after I graduated from college. After that, I got hired on to become a full-time artist for that company. Then I stayed further on for a year. Soon after that, my ex-colleague gave me an opportunity to join his new company as a 3D artist, a freelance 3D artist. So, yeah, from then on, I became a freelance for about 2 years now. I'm currently working freelancing. As a freelancer, my primary role is to accept art assignments or briefs from clients who are mainly composed of art directors, CG artists, or concept artists who are mainly interested in to convert their 2D art into 3D. These assignments are usually in a form of contracts, and the projects tend to last from 2 to 4 months, with some bigger projects needing more time, lasting about half a year. Once in a while, I also do art collaboration with other artists to put new ideas into concepts and artwork. That depends, I suppose. If the game design is great and if it's free for download, I wouldn't mind giving it a try. But if the game doesn't attract me or fun, if I played it for 20 minutes or so, I'll just ignore it or quit the game entirely. But most games require payment upfront before we can play. Well, that used to be a problem until Apple's App Store introduced a 14-minute trial period, so it's pretty convenient. For example, on Steam, if the game you've purchased isn't up to your liking, you can fully refund it as long as you play it for less than 2 hours. So, yeah. Well, I think microtransactions is a really good business model for game related businesses after all, because mainly it lets customers to play and try the game before they fully commit to it. Well, for example, what I said before. After all, what's the easiest way to attract people to play your game? Well, by making it free, of course. Mainly because when you let your customers have access to a game for free, they are able to enjoy the game without any commitment. Hence, if the players really enjoyed the game, they'll drag along their friends, ask them to play the game with them as well. Well, in some sense, it becomes a free advertising, sort of. Hopefully by then, some of the players will actually enjoy the game enough to pay for microtransactions. Uh, the last time I bought an in-game item was a couple months ago, I believe. And it's a car that I really liked since I was a kid. Uh, it appeared in a game called Real Racing 3 for Android devices. Uh, The only reason I love microtransactions is that as a player yourself, you can choose how much you want to spend or commit to a game. Since there's nothing for you to pay in the beginning, usually for a game with microtransactions, you can try out the game for as long and as much as you like before you fully commit any money to it. So yeah, that's my experience. In the beginning, I think that microtransactions is just a business model made specifically to benefit the companies who've made the game. However, after trying out games that has microtransactions in them like Real Racing 3, I could say that it's beneficial for both the consumers and the company who makes those games. I believe for this the possibility is quite big, but then again, I believe that some companies will still stick to the pay first and then play later model, as not every developers have a huge investment fund, and hence they are not certain about investing a huge sum of money upfront without any promise of seeing their money again. I think it's unfair to charge a player for the full price of the game in the first place if they have to end up paying more for the items used in game or for the DLCs to fully experience the game. By right, the players should be able to have full access to the game once they paid for it. Paying 40 to 50 pounds just to have access to contents that should already be in the game itself sounds ridiculous itself. If not, it's absurd. Besides, I'm sure that no one would be willing to pay more than what they have already paid to gain access to the game. Well, in some sense, as a game consumer myself, I don't think I would like to spend more than what I need after I bought the game. If you think about it, if you spend your hard-earned money for a copy of a game to bring home and only realize that you have limited access to a game, how would you feel? Annoyed? Betrayed? It's like buying a loaf of bread and realizing that you have to pay extra to get the other half of the bread. That's what I think, in my opinion.
So there we have it. Maybe it is just a psychological behavior. We all love to play games that let us enjoy and spend some time exploring it before starting to commit our real money on it. Like he said, who doesn't like to play good free games after all? Therefore, we can predict that microtransactions business model will be continued to live among MMORPG games and smartphone app games in the future. Perhaps with careful integration Perhaps with careful integrations and considerations from developers and publisher, microtransactions will be the business model for all games in prospective years.